What's up guys, welcome back to On the Brick. As some of you may remember, a short while back I took a look at this custom play scale version of the UT-AT, and while it does a good job at being a play set, I felt like it was lacking in some areas and immediately set out to improve them. Also, I did find the front to the cockpit of my UT-AT, but what started as a project just to make this set slightly better ended up turning into this. This is my Minifig Scale UT-AT. For those who don't know, the UT-AT stands for Unstable Terrain Artillery Transport, and it's also known as the Trident since it does have the two guns on the side and the one on the top. The one on the top of my set currently isn't attached as I was sent the wrong pieces, but I do have the correct ones on the way and they will be attached shortly. And before we take a closer look, there are two quick things that I want to say. First, this is version 1. I will definitely be going back through and improving certain areas of this set that I will be talking about shortly. But second, if you are looking at getting instructions, I will let you know how you can do so near the end of this video. This set is really big. It contains 2,488 pieces, measures 19 inches long or 48 centimeters, about 7 inches or 18 centimeters tall. It really depends on how you want that top cannon to be, and it's 9.5 inches or 24 centimeters wide. That is measured at the end of the cannons. Now this set did take me a while to put together. There were a lot of different versions, a lot of trial and error, and some areas that I'm still not entirely happy with. But overall, I do think it came out pretty good, especially considering that this was my very first Minifig Scale build. And here's Captain Picara to scale next to it so you can see just how monstrous of a build this really is. Or I can show you it in comparison to the play scale set, which was only around 800 pieces if I remember correctly, and as you can see is significantly smaller. So you can also see that I kind of went a little overboard with my redesign, but I'm not sure if that's really a bad thing. I do want to reiterate though that the version you are seeing on screen is not the final version. In fact, it's a little different than what is in the studio file. There were several areas that worked in the studio file, but when I tried to recreate them in real life just didn't work as well as I thought they would. There are some minor things, like you can see some of the off-colored pieces down here that if they were just light gray you probably wouldn't notice at all. This entire section up here, which we will take a closer look at, is completely different as some of the connections just would not work for some reason, though thankfully they also weren't necessary at all. But the first section I want to take a much closer look at are the legs, because while they look fine, in case you couldn't tell, they are not functionally able to support the rest of this build. That's partly because there is a full interior which we will take a look at, and partly because I don't really know how to do Technic that well, and so I didn't use Technic. So you can see that half these legs are just floating there. Now if you have any ideas on how to make stronger Technic legs that would work for this build and actually be able to support it, please do let me know, because I would really appreciate that, and I'm 99% certain that a brick built version just will not be able to have the strength to support this entire set. Instead, at the moment, they're just relying on a few pieces in the back and another few pieces up front to be able to support everything above the ground. Continuing looking at the legs though, you can see that they do have some of the pistons that are there, along with some of like the mud flaps that I want to call them, these details on the side of the actual UT-AT. They're one of those things that when you're looking at the set you just don't really realize, but when they're not there they make a big difference. One area that I really wanted to improve on was the cockpit, as the one in the smaller version was rather lackluster in my opinion. Full disclosure, this set was designed to go alongside Brickvault's AT-TE, so some areas of this build were inspired or just copied, for obvious reasons I'll go into, from that build. So this cockpit is a modified version of the one you will find on their AT-TE, with a really big emphasis on modified, as I had to change a good bit to make it work with this build. For instance, the top was changed to look a little more accurate, along with the sides, the front, the interior. Pretty much most of this is actually completely different. But one area of this cockpit that I really wanted to change from the smaller version was that it actually angles slightly downward from the rest of the set. And if I lay this gun parallel to the rest of the set, you can see that the cockpit does just that. Also, yes, you can fit a person inside, it's just not an easy thing to do and is one of the changes I want to make. Speaking of guns and the top of the set, the gun on the top of the set does have a wide range of mobility. Considering the cannon on top of both the UT-AT and the AT-TE are basically exactly the same. This is one of the areas that was influenced from Brickvault's build, but there are some changes as this one does not have a seat for a gunner, and so they are aesthetically different. The 4 smaller cannons on the back are able to be lifted up and down quite easily, but also they are placed on top of turntables, meaning you are able to rotate them around freely, and also because of the way they're built, they're not just going to be flopping around all the time. They're both sturdy but easily movable, and I'm actually quite happy with how this area turned out. One area that definitely needs some improvement was this front area that I was talking about earlier, and it's also a place where if you have any ideas for, I am all ears. The thing about this section is that the front panel around the cockpit actually connects both to plates at the bottom of the build and to the hinges you see here. That's why there's such an open gap here, because the build for that just would not fit. It works perfectly fine in the studio program, but obviously that didn't translate to real life. That said, it also wasn't necessary at all, as the front panel is more than capable of just staying where it is on its own. So again, this is an area that I plan to redesign and make much more smooth, as honestly this entire top section does not look as good as I know it can. Now I do like that I managed to get both the lights and the vents on the top of the build here, but again this whole section has a lot that needs to be improved on, because even the slope on the back of it doesn't connect like it was supposed to, but again thankfully it wasn't necessary as it just sits there perfectly fine. You can pop it right on off, see the hinge plates that weren't necessary for it at all, and it will just sit there when you put it back in. It's actually a pretty snug fit, so it's not going to move around or fall out or anything. It works perfectly fine on accident. Now I did say that there is a full interior, and while that is true, getting to it is definitely something that I need to change. While I designed the set with easy access in mind, I realized I had done some modifications that made that really difficult, and in one area pretty much impossible. The idea was to do what I was trying on screen. You pop off the cannon, you open up the back, and then you were supposed to be able just to pop off the entire top. But unfortunately only this back part ended up coming out, as the front is integrated into the build. This part is intentionally 2 pieces, it was designed like that, but even so we can still get a good idea of what is on the interior of this set. There's no actual information in canon about this, so I had to go off of what was in Legends, and that says that the UT-AT was capable of carrying 18 passengers and 5 gunners, along with its 1 pilot of course. So when I said earlier that I just straight up copied something, all I meant was these seats. They are exactly identical to the one in Brickvault's ATTE, and the only reason for that is because in all honesty the Republic wouldn't change them from ship to ship. I guess these are vehicles, but the point is the same. And these gunner seats are also from them as well, and full credit to David Buckles who designed these seats and the gunner seats as well, and they look so good that of course I had to use them. There is actually room for all 18 passengers in here, including the 5 gunners. There's 2 in the back and 3 up front, which again is blocked at the moment, but I promise you they are in there. You can kind of make out one of them, but all 3 are in there. Even though I didn't show it, it is pretty easy to put back together. All of this comes together really easy and pretty smoothly as well. You know, and if you've been seeing this and you're like, hey, I can build that and I can make the proper changes necessary, that's not really an issue. Well, I am selling the studio file for $10. I put a lot of work into this. I think it was probably 20 or 30 hours into designing this set, and who knows how many more in redesigning it so that it will actually be perfect. You can contact me at the email in the description down below, or on Instagram if you prefer that way, but I do want to be perfectly clear, the $10 is only for the studio file. There are no PDF instructions of any sort, it's just for the file. However, if you do choose to purchase this, any and all future updates, including the eventual PDF instructions, will be sent to you for free. So again, if you are interested in building this, the studio file is only $10 and all future updates are free. One last thing to be clear about, this is a display piece. It is pretty strong, it will hold together, but you really don't want to be playing with it too much. Still though, I am super excited to have this first version out, and I have a lot of you to thank for making that possible. But I want to know what you guys think about it. Let me know your comments, suggestions, ideas in the comments down below. If you're a fan of this set and want to see future updates, remember to hit that like button. Please do consider subscribing and ringing that bell, as it helps me out a lot. And if you really like what you see, see, I would really encourage you to check out my Patreon. I have plans for what happens when I get more patrons, including looking at some of your customs and even monthly giveaways. But in any case, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for 227 subscribers at the time of recording this, because I keep forgetting to say that. On Friday, I'm actually going to do my Q&A as a thank you for 200 subscribers, so if you have any other questions, throw them in the comments now. Anyway, thank you again, and I will see you next time.